This is Land of Havilah, Ezekiel 10. Ezekiel is still sitting in his home in Mesopotamia, but in his vision he's in Jerusalem. Yahweh showed him some abominations that were going on there. Then Yahweh started to do something about it. He called for the 6 angels who were in charge of the city. One of the angels was wearing linen and had an inkhorn by his side. Yahweh commanded him to go through the city, marking the foreheads of all who sigh and moan at the abominations. Yahweh commanded the other 5 angels to follow the first one and to kill every man, woman, and child who didn't have the mark. Soon the first angel came back to the courtyard and reported to Yahweh that he had finished marking. The vision continues in this chapter. Ezekiel is still in the courtyard watching everything. We'll read the chapter straight through, then repeat it in your narrator's wording. Ezekiel says, verse 1, "Then I looked, and see, in the expanse that was over the head of the cherubim, there appeared above them, as it were, a sapphire stone, as the appearance of the likeness of a throne. He spoke to the man clothed in linen, and said, Go in between the whirling wheels, even under the cherub, and fill both your hands with coals of fire from between the cherubim, and scatter them over the city. He went in as I watched. Now the cherubim stood on the right side of the house when the man went in, and the cloud filled the inner court. Yahweh's glory mounted up from the cherub and stood over the threshold of the house. And the house was filled with the cloud, and the court was full of the brightness of Yahweh's glory. The sound of the wings of the cherubim was heard even to the outer court, as the voice of God Almighty when he speaks. It came to pass, when he commanded the man clothed in linen, saying, Take fire from between the whirling wheels, from between the cherubim, that he went in and stood beside a wheel. The cherub stretched out his hand from between the cherubim to the fire that was between the cherubim, and took some of it, and put it into the hands of him who was clothed in linen, who took it and went out. The form of a man's hand appeared here in the cherubim under the wings. I looked, and behold, there were 4 wheels beside the cherubim, 1 wheel beside one cherub, and another wheel beside another cherub. The appearance of the wheels was like a beryl stone. As for their appearance, the 4 of them had one likeness, like a wheel within a wheel. When they went in their 4 directions. They didn't turn as they went, but to the place where the head looked, they followed it. They didn't turn as they went. Their whole body, including their backs, their hands, their wings, and the wheels, were full of eyes all around, even the wheels that the 4 of them had. As for the wheels, they were called in my hearing the whirling wheels. Every one of them had 4 faces. The first face was the face of a cherub. The second face was the face of a man. The third face was the face of a lion. The 4th was the face of an eagle. The cherubim mounted up. This is the living creature that I saw by the river Kabar. When the cherubim went, the wheels went beside them. And when the cherubim lifted up their wings to mount up from the earth, the wheels also didn't turn from beside them. When they stood, these stood. When they mounted up, these mounted up with them, for the spirit of the living creature was in them. Yahweh's glory went out from over the threshold of the house and stood over the cherubim. The cherubim lifted up their wings and mounted up from the earth in my sight when they went out, with the wheels beside them. Then they stood at the door of the east gate of Yahweh's house, and the glory of the God of Israel was over them above. This is the living creature that I saw under the God of Israel by the river Kabar, and I knew that they were cherubim. Every one had 4 faces, and every one 4 wings. The likeness of the hands of a man was under their wings. As for the likeness of their faces, they were the faces which I saw by the river Kabar, their appearances and themselves. They each went straight forward. Comment, that's the end of the chapter. In your narrator's wording, it says, There in the courtyard I saw the same arrangement I saw by the river Kabar. There were the 4 cherubim, and over the cherubim the expanse, and over the expanse the throne. The substance of the throne looked something like sapphire stone. I was about to find out that Yahweh called the cherubim by the singular, cherub. I suppose he did so because the 4 of them acted as one. Anyway, he spoke again to the angel in linen, the one who had the inkhorn and who did the markings. He commanded him, Go under the cherub between the wheels and fill both your hands with coals of fire from there and scatter them over the city. I watched as the angel obeyed and went in between the wheels. At this time the cherubim were situated on the right side of the temple. When the angel went between the wheels to get the coals, a cloud filled the inner courtyard where we were. Yahweh was glorious as usual. He moved from the throne above the cherubim and stood over the threshold of the temple. When he did so, the temple was filled with the same cloud that was filling the courtyard. The part of the cloud that was in the courtyard reflected the brightness of Yahweh's glory and was lit up with it. The sound of the cherubim's wings could be heard all the way to the outer court. The beating of them had an awesome sound to it, like the voice of God Almighty when he speaks. Anyway, when Yahweh commanded the angel to go between the wheels of the cherubim, the wheels were whirling, by the way, the angel went in as commanded and stood beside one of the wheels. One of the cherubs stretched out his hand, reached into the fire that was between the wheels, and put some of the fire into the angel's hands. The angel took it and departed to scatter the coals over the city as Yahweh commanded. By the way, each cherub had hands under the wings, just like I had seen before. The hands were like a man's hands. And as before, there were 4 cherubs, each with a wheel next to it. The substance of the wheels was something like clear gemstone. The wheels had a matching appearance and were complicated, like a wheel within a wheel. They didn't operate like ordinary wheels, or even in a way that makes sense when I describe it. It was like they went in their 4 directions but didn't turn as they went. They went whichever direction the cherubim looked with their heads, but without turning. The whole body of each cherub had eyes all over, looking every direction, on their backs, hands, wings, and even on their wheels. The eyes on the wheels were all around the wheel. I heard the wheels being referred to as the whirling wheels. And as I had seen before, each cherub had 4 faces, one of a man, lion, eagle, and cherub. I said ox last time instead of cherub, and I'm not saying the face was different this time. It was the same, but now I call it the face of a cherub. The 4 cherubim hovered. This is the same living creature I saw by the river Kabar. I say living creature singular because even though there were 4 of them, they acted in unison. The wheels stayed with the cherubim at all times, whether the cherubim moved or whether they lifted their wings and rose from the earth. When the cherubim weren't going anywhere, the wheels didn't go anywhere. When the cherubim rose, the wheels rose, because the wheels had the same spirit as their cherub. But back to Yahweh in his glorious appearance. Now he moved from the threshold and went above the cherubim again. As I watched, the cherubim raised their wings, rose from the earth, and began to leave. Of course, the wheels went with them. They paused at the east gate of the courtyard, which is the gate directly facing the front of the temple. Yahweh was above in his glorious appearance. Again, the living creature beneath was the same creature I saw by the river Kabar. They were 4 who acted as one, each with wheels, but this time I knew they were cherubim, or a single cherub. Each cherub had 4 faces, 4 wings, and under their wings hands, similar to a man's hands. Their faces were the same as I saw by the river Kabar. That's the end of the chapter, but before leaving it, let's take note of one action Yahweh commanded in verse 2, which was for the angel to spread coals of fire over the city. The fire represented the cleansing and purging he would perform. In Deuteronomy 4:23 and 24, he said, "Be careful lest you forget the covenant of Yahweh your God, for Yahweh your God is a consuming fire." Then let's remember 2 chapters ago when Yahweh pointed out the abominations, he asked Ezekiel, "Do you see the abominations they do here, that I should go far off from my sanctuary?" But instead of staying away from his sanctuary, he wasn't going to let anyone run him off. He told the one angel to go through the city and mark the faithful, and the other 5 to go out killing everyone else. Then in this chapter, the sequence was that he issued a command to cleanse the city with fire, and while that command was being carried out, he filled the courtyard and the temple with the cloud of his glory. So it was basically a reclamation of the temple and of Jerusalem. The upcoming Babylonian siege and the desolation that followed would be a cleansing of wickedness from the land. Since someone had to go, it would be them and not Yahweh. Ezekiel 11 is next.